Hello, friends. Uh, we are introduced to English literature from 14th century England, and Geoffrey Chaucer is the pioneer who introduces to us his age as much as we see our age also existing in the world of Chaucer. He juggles up an occasion where 29 pilgrims have gathered together at the Tabardin on one beautiful evening of April month, and Chaucer had already decided to move towards Canterbury and seek redemption from the physical ailments. So also these fit people, 29 pilgrims, have chosen to be on their way to Canterbury. And Chaucer also gives us an idea that of his gregarious habit, that while he had time and space, he went and talked to each of the pilgrims and then came to a fit condition where he can give to us a crystal clear portrait of these pilgrims. Yesterday we did the yeoman, a guildsman, and then we did nun, the first female character of the two females in the portrait gallery of the prologue. So after the nun, Chaucer decides to tell to us yet another character. He introduces us to one of the primest order from among the ecclesiasts. Ecclesiasts are people from religion, and there were four orders, that is, classes from among the clergymen, and at the head of everyone was the class of the monk. And then we read his fifth character, the monk. A monk there was a fair for the monastery. So this monk, he doesn't say that he's a worthy man. He begins by saying, he introduces us to the monk and says that this monk was fair for the monastery. Monastery, the setup, the establishment where the people of the religion stayed. So he was very fair to his monastery. Why was he fair? What proved that his fairness? He was an outrider that loved venery. So he makes himself suitable member of the monastery by not being a scholar, by not being a helper, but his greatest quality was that he was an outrider. He loved riding, and not only riding, but he also loved bravery, venery. Do we relate a monk being an outrider and the monk loving bravery? Chaucer cannot limit himself here. He continues in the same strain of presenting the character of monk when he says he's a manly man to be an abbotable. So his ableness as a fair claim to his monkhood is that he is a manly man, very strong. And his strength proves him an able father, an able clergyman. So, in fact, Chaucer will not tell it straight. He tells us plainly enough that it was a strength which procured for him the position of the senior most monk. Covertly, he is wishing to say that it was his prowess, it was his physical um, ability that made him the senior most and the best and the leading monk. So he had proved his ability with his qualities of being a rider and with his quality of being a bravery loving man. We see not a monk, we see here a WWE champion maybe. And this outrider, he had full many a dainty horse had he in stable. So he has his own personal stable where he has full many dainty horses. And when he rode, men might his bridle hear jingling in a whistling wind, all clear. So on his horsebacks, when he rode, men might his bridle. Bridle is the leather belt with which the horse is put under harness. That belt, people could hear that jingling in a whistling wind, all clear. So wind was not whistling, he used to whistle. Chaucer is shifting the guilt and the mischief upon the wind, which had moved the mind of this monk. Sharp, he was a man too much into the world, and the bridle that he put on his horses had bells clung to them, and they would go jingling, and also as loud, so they could jingle. The jingling of his bells, the bridle of his horses could be heard, and also and also as loud as do the chapel bells. So the proclamation of the coming of this monk was made not by the chapel bell. Chapel bells are the bells which are put high on the spires of the church so that people even in the distance can understand, can ready themselves to sit down for their prayers or sit down for any work in the prescribed time. So his chapel bells did not ring as loud as did the small bells that hung on the bridle of his horse. And these were very loud, as do the chapel bells there, as this lord was keeper of the cell. So why this authority? Why the authority to be able to be an outrider and to be a strong man and to have dainty horses in his own personal stable, and when he rides, then all the bridle gives out a clear proclamation of his advent? Because because this Lord was keeper of the cell. He was the master of the monastery. An implied sense of misuse of authority can be assimilated from this from this introduction of the monk as being fair in the monastery with his riding habits and with his love for bravery. He continues describing this man. The rule of Saint Maurice or of Saint Benedict, because that it was old and somewhat strict, this same monk let old things pace and held after the new world the space. In these 4 lines, Chaucer is ridiculing this monk. He shifts the guilt outside of the monk and said that this monk because he did not believe in the rules of Saint Maurice and Saint Benedict. These are two saints who laid down that monks should be holy men, monks should observe a code of conduct, of charity and of goodness. So he said that I do not want to follow the rules of Saint Maurice or of Saint Benedict, because, and he gives the reason, that they were old and somewhat strict. So he never followed any principles which were strictly to be followed by ecclesiasts. This same monk let old things pass. You should think good about him. That this man is not after old things. He doesn't care for them. Let old things pass means he just left them behind and held after the new world the space. So his bother is only of the new world. Now, the new world is the earth. According to the biblical explanations, in fact, God only had the heaven. And then, after he was disgusted with the betrayal accorded to him by Lucifer, he created a new world. The new world was the earth that hung from a golden chain from the heaven. So this monk also has a new world made for him. He doesn't bother about that old world in which the old strict rules of religiosity had to be followed. He just left them back and he had a new world created for himself. He gave not of that text a pulled hen that saith that hunters be not holy men. He, Yaf is YAF, gave, not, NAUGHT means any care. He did not care for that text even as much as we would care for a pulled hen, a hen that has been deprived of its feathers, a useless hen. तो उनके लिए वो मुर्गी के बराबर भी नहीं थी, एक उसकी कदर नहीं थी, एक नुची पिटी मुर्गी के बराबर भी. ही गेव नॉट ऑफ दैट टेक्स्ट, उसका उनके लिए कोई महत्व नहीं था उस अध्याय के लिए जो कहता था दैट सेथ that hunters be not holy men. He did not bother about those words of Saint Maurice or of Saint Benedict. Nor did he bother about, nor that a monk when he is reckless is likened like a fish that is waterless. And he did not even bother for this, that if a monk is thrown out of the monastery, he would suffer like a fish out of water. He did not bother about that. He did not bother about all the old strict rules by which a man of religion should abide by. This is to say, a monk out of his cloister, but the elk text held he not worth an oyster. So this is to say, Chaucer is explaining that if a monk is thrown out of his cloister, just as a fish is thrown out of the water, so he did not bother about that if a monk has been thrown out of the cloister, he held not that text even worth an oyster. Oyster is the most beaten coin, the smallest coin that has gone obsolete. He did not care even that much about that text. He was not bothered. So this is his haughtiness. He would not listen to the words of the strict old saints, but he had created his own new world. After saying all this, after talking about the haughtiness of the monk, Chaucer says, and I say, his opinion was good. Why should he study and make himself wood? So he says, okay, it's perfectly okay. क्यों एक आदमी को इतना ध्यान देना चाहिए? Why should he want? His opinion is good. Why should he study? Why should the strong man sit on a book and study it and make himself wood? Wood is mad. Because if he reads those books in which strict rules of conduct are written, he would go mad. A man who's got horses with their bridles jingling in the air. On one side there is a call from the horses, and on the other side there is a call from St. Maurice and St. Benedict. This man would not go into any conflict. He would not make himself mad. How? Upon a book in cloister always to pore or swing with his hands and labor. So he did not want to sit in his cloister, his monastery, and pore, P-O-U-R is P-O-R-E, pore. Pore means study. Focusedly, he did not want to do anything of the kind, to sit there and read a book or swing. Swing is labor. So work hard. Nor did he want to work hard with his hands and labor, as Augustine bid. Why should he do that? That would make him mad. If he does this, how shall the world be served? Now, the only point of concern for this man is because if he sits and reads a book, and if he works hard, as St. Augustine has bid, has dictated, then how will this new world which he has created for himself, the world of ridings and the world of horses and the world of his mastery in that cell, how would that world be served? Let Augustine have his swing to him reserved. So he said, okay, Augustine, आप कहते हो आप मेहनत करो, आप ही करो. Keep this to yourself. Have this labor to him reserved. Just keep it to yourself. I am not the one who would follow anything of the kind. Therefore, he was a precursor aright. Only because he did not bother for the world, so he was a precursor. Precursor is a master. You know, we all know that a master shouldn't follow the words of what people say. People might lead you into disgust, into losing everything. So he did not bother. He only reminded himself that he was the master and that only he would dictate the ways for himself. Greyhounds he had. See that the nun had small hounds. So they all love dogs. They have rid themselves away from God, and the inversion of the God is dear to them. We have already seen that the nun also had those small hounds, and this one, because he is a hunter, because he is an outrider, so he is not content to have small hounds with him. He has greyhounds, the dogs which are used for while one goes on hunting campaigns. Greyhounds he had, as swift as foals in flight. So the dogs were so swift, they would not run, they would fly like birds. Of pricking and hunting on and of pricking and of hunting for the hare was all his lust. Now Chaucer cannot contain himself. He uses the word lust. Lust is a greed that is paramount, a greed for carnal pleasures. So his only lust was to prick, that is, chase and hunt the hare. Why would a monk, is it befitting for a monk to hunt a hare, the helpless creature that does no harm to anyone but stays and makes a glory in the small woods that were around? So he would not let them live in happiness with his horses, dainty horses, and with his greyhounds he would chase them out of their hidings. Was all his lust, for no cost would he spare, and he would not spare this lust for anything. If he has to go hunting, he will go hunting. He will not read the book, he would not labor. The only work that delighted him was to hunt the hare. I say his sleeves perfiled at the hand with grist. So I say. Again, Chaucer comes in between to give you a comment, a crisp comment on the behavior of this monk. He says his sleeves. He doesn't speak about his dress. His first attention goes to the sleeves of the coat that this monk was wearing, which was perfiled. Perfiled is the lining of which at the hand was with gris. Gris is the skin of the grizzly bear, the a very expensive kind of fur. So his coat was lined with fur, and that the finest of a land. So the gris that he was wearing was the finest, very expensive. See, the monk is in love with money, with material world. For him, no spiritual gains hold any the good. He has left them back in search of the new world that he has created for himself. So he wore the sleeves of his coat, they were lined with gris, and which was the finest of the land. And for to fasten his hat under his chin, hood his hat, under his chin, he had of gold wrought a curious pin. So again the image of gold comes here. The nun had the gold brooch of A, speaking amor omnia, and so also he has his hat, which he is wearing, is tied under his chin with a very delicate gold pin. A love knot at the greater end there was, and there was a bow at his cap. His head was bald. Now, how, let us see, if he had a hat, how should his head be visible? Because it sat high up on his head, and the remaining of the head that was bald was visible, that shone as any glass. And his head was shining, and also his face, as he had been anointed. So not only his head was shining as glass, but also his face was shining like glass, as he had been anointed, as if he had oiled himself. So, love for dainties, love for fashion. He was a lord full fat and in good point. So this man is, he told you he loved, the second line was he loved venery, that is, he loved bravery. And to show his bravery, he was fat and in good point. But for all the killings of the hare and for all the hunting, his eyes steep. So these are the features which spell his lusty character. His eyes were sunken deep and rolling in his head. So there was mischief moving in his eyes, and this moved the eyeballs in his head. So how deep they should be that it appeared that his eyeballs were moving in his head, that seemed as a furnace of a lead. And so red were his eyes, clearly indicates that he should be a drunkard as well. His eyes were red like a furnace, अंगार के जैसे लाल. His boots supple. Not only the fur of the grizzly bear did he have, but his boots were very supple, supple, soft. His horse in great state. So his horse was also a very fine pedigree horse. Now certainly he was a fair prelat. So all this goes on to confirm for certainty that he was a fair father, prelat, churchman. Sometimes, it is very necessary that when you are talking, when you are exposing someone who is your contemporary and who is stronger because he is a outrider and he is a hunter, and he is a strong man. So Chaucer has no heart or courage to say anything directly for him. So he says, when he uses the word fair, prelat, in fact, he is meaning just the opposite of what he is saying. This fair should be associated with the complexion and not with the nature of this monk. He was not pale as a porpine ghost. He was not thin as a ghost, because the one who sits down to study books, and books as difficult and as strict as spelling the rules dictated by Saint Benedict and Saint Maurice and Saint Augustine, one would really go as skeletonic as a ghost is. And on top of that, if he is required to swing, that is to labor with his hands, other churchmen should have been very lean, the ones who worked hard and the ones who pored over books. But this one was not pale as a porpined ghost. A fat swan loved he best of any roast. So, how ignominious for a monk to feed upon a swan, a creature, a bird that we all hold as a symbol of innocence, of purity, of goodness. So he loved best a swan, a roasted swan on his dinner table. And then Chaucer ends it by saying his palfrey was as brown as is a berry. Palfrey is beard. So all the face oiled. Chaucer doesn't mention his moustache. He only speaks about the beard that hung on his chin, under which he had tied a gold brooch. So this was as brown as is a berry. This ends the character of monk. And since monk belonged to the highest order of the church, he is taken, the first man from church is the monk. He is from the highest order among the four orders of the church. He should have led the train by his good conduct. But this monk is not the one who should come on a pilgrimage. But he should come also, because so much of sins does he carry in his soul that need to be washed. When Saint Thomas Becket would redeem the others from sickness of the bodies, so also he is heading towards Canterbury to have these sicknesses of lust and gluttony and wickedness, and not really working hard as a monk should. He is a fitly character to move towards Canterbury. Chaucer has taken this ecclesiast immediately after the nun, because now Chaucer is becoming breathless. A nun, as a representative of the religion, does not come up to his expectation of what? A nun, a woman, of whom we all expect some kind of charity, though charitable she is and pitiful also towards the suffering of others, but that she is a counterfeit character. She loves to give herself to the courtly manners. And here the monk is, who should have read all the rules dictated by Saint Maurice and by Saint Benedict and Saint Augustine as the head of his monastery. He does not do that. His only love is to be a rider, to go hunting, and to eat the finest, and to dress in the best. But his real character is betrayed in his physical appearance of his whole body being anointed, his wearing the gold brooch to tie his hat, and also the eyes that rolled in the steep furnace of his face, the red eyes. This is indicative, fairly indicative. And we have to learn how, by not speaking plainly ill of someone, we can still prick at the conscience of our characters. Chaucer is a leading artist who tells us how humor and at times even satire, non malicious satire, can be aimed at simply by giving the outward appearance of the people. So, in this portrait gallery, we are witnessing characters in the outward, and these outward characters indicate very well the internal of these characters, the much of corruption that had entered the 14th century England, not in the people of the states just, but in the among the people of the church as well. Thank you. We shall continue.